You're listening to the Paul Higgins Show, where ambitious tech consultants come to unlock their potential. After 18 years as a global leader, I launched several businesses, culminating in a successful exit. I'm sharing what I learned, plus what's working now from mentoring tech consultants. You will hear leaders within our industry to help you build a business you love that allows you to do what you want. If you are looking for immediate cash flow wins to fuel your growth, go to our free ebook at paulhigginsmentoring.com/roadmap. Imagine your clients are asking you to help improve their SaaS, whatever that SaaS is, and you look at their processes, and to put it nicely, they are severely lacking. You really have two choices. Hello, this is Paul Higgins, and welcome to the Paul Higgins Show, episode 570. In today's podcast, I talked to Derrick from the processfixer.com, and he is your second choice. Of course, the first one is for you and your team to fix the processes. And what you're going to learn from Derrick is three key things. One is why Western management philosophy needs to change. The second is the 4 M's of process, and he gives some great examples. And then the third is how he can help you to get a successful implementation where you're not blamed for the processes being the fault of poor implementation. Derrick is an Emmy award-winning content creator, 4-time author, operations podcaster with more than 160,000 monthly listeners, and optimization consultant renowned for his pioneering work in process engineering, design, and transformation. Derrick's work spans more than 20 years and 150 companies, from early stage companies right up to Fortune 10. Derrick's approach melds essentialism with a keen focus on human-centric system design, emphasizing the need for regular audits, reflection, and investment to achieve optimization. Derrick believes that organizations should have a fundamental process transforming the inputs of resources into value through outputs. You can watch Derrick on our YouTube channel, Paul Higgins Mentoring. Don't forget to subscribe. And what I'll do now is hand you over to Derrick from theprocessfixer.com. Derrick, bring it to have you here.
Yeah, it's just great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, look, very excited. I've had the opportunity to listen to some of your podcasts, which will have a link in the show notes, and you're just full of energy. So I know you're going to bring that today. But why don't we kick off with who your ideal client is and what problems you love to solve for them?
Yeah, I think our ideal client is, now this is in the US, small business here, $5 million. It's a pretty small business. So 5 million up to about $1 billion or $2 billion tends to be really our target audience, which is really the smaller to medium-sized business here stateside. We're working with companies that have maybe 10 up to about 1,000 employees, and working really to solve the problem for them that they don't understand how the sausage is made. Here in the States, we like to say that we understand the inputs of our business, we understand the outputs, and maybe we even understand the outcomes, but the throughput, how things actually get done, is where things tend to fall apart, particularly if you've gone through any period of rapid growth. And that's usually where we step in with clients, is to help them to better understand how things get done inside their business.
And are you, from a products versus services mix, what would be the mix of your clients you work with?
It's probably, I wish it was more products, probably 15% products right now and 85% services, which is, that's always a challenge in consulting. One of the reasons I do write books and I do other things is because I'm trying to get more productized. So it's not just my time. I have a nice team, but for some reason, every time somebody calls and says, we want a workshop, and we say, can we send you one of our facilitators? They go, no, we want Derrick. So I've got to get out of that cycle. So I'm working on that myself.
Yeah, great. So that's your internal. What about your clients? What's their mix? Sort of give me you've talked about the revenue size and employee size, but what sort of businesses are?
Yeah, it's a little bit broad. I will tell you, I just wrote 4 case studies this morning. One was a call center, one was a doctor's office, one was a commercial construction company, and the other was a supply lot that supplies construction organizations. So it is relatively broad. I would say Higher education is a big piece. Healthcare is a big piece. Construction, manufacturing, service companies. We had a big HVAC contractor in here last week. So it really is a trucking company. We had one in the other day. So it's really broad. Anybody that does anything is who our client really is.
But more B2B space, obviously.
Definitely a lot more B2B. We do get some B2C, but B2B, it tends to be where we tend to find those. I would say there's probably 80% B2B versus B2C.
Yeah. And look, the name is Brilliant Your Domain, though, the process fixer. It's very, very easy. But what's your version of what is a process?
Well, oh boy, what is a process? This is a great question. So I'm going to break this down and say that I think that in every business, we have actions that turn into results. When we have a result repeated, that's a process, right? We get a couple of actions and results that create something. That process then becomes part of a system. And that system is what that department operates on. It's the functions that each things take. If we think about this, and I know you work with a lot of developers, if we think about it from a relational database perspective, the circles on a process map are objects in a database, and the lines are create, read, update, delete. It is essentially, it's a database structure, and it's how these things are working together succinctly and in order. And when it comes to process, there's only two ways it's formed. It's either formed through mutation and evolution, or it's formed via intelligent design. You want to be the designer of your process, just like you want to be the one that has documented your own code and has integrated those pieces together and have tested those. When you don't do that, you have problems. And that's what most companies have, is their processes are sufficient,
Yes.
but they're not efficient. They haven't applied design techniques to them. So really, it's just this small cycle of actions and results that grow into a larger, bigger organism that become a system inside that department. And then there's what we call the system of the systems, which is how do all of those things work and flow together as a single organism, not as independent departments, but how do they work as one to accomplish the goal of the company?
Yeah, and you know, I just remind you to listen to Derrick Main's episode 570. For a lot of the clients that I work, a NetSuite partner, a Salesforce partner, they'll go in and people want to either improve or, it's mainly improving the system. They've already got their system and they've outgrown their system. And what they've often done is they haven't really outgrown the system. Just the way that they're doing their processes is inefficient, that can't maximize the system, right? And I'm sure you've heard this a million times. And you're watching or listening to this, you're nodding, like, and it's a bit like the chicken and the egg, right? Like they sort of, sometimes I'll follow what the consultant said for the initial setup of the system, but then I work different to that. And the way that I work different to that then isn't actually mapped in the system, and it gets really complicated, right? Can you give me sort of your view on how that evolution should actually happen?
Yeah, so I actually, and I'm glad that you bring this up, and you mentioned NetSuite and Salesforce, because we work with lots of NetSuite and Salesforce implementers. And what the way that we do things differently is we say this: look, a client's going to come to you and say, I want to fix this. The first question you should ask is, does it really need fixing? Because if you got a call from an executive, a great example, I was just in North Carolina a few weeks ago. Client told me all of our problems are here. I did a workshop with 32 leaders, and at the end of the day, we had 100 votes to place up where we felt like the problems were. How many do you think fell into where the executives thought the problems were? The number is 0. The executives saw it there, but the manager said, no. This is an R&D technology problem that occurs months and months and months and months and months before this comes up. You get escalations here, but you got escalations here because we didn't do it right over here. Yes. So what we do differently is we say, look, let's not trust executives. Who we should trust are what we call the class of employees. We call them the believables. These are the people that actually do the work, and bring them into a room and say, show us what you do. And it will look very different from what your executive client has said. And then all you have to say to them is, just like a child that you take into the doctor's office and they bring up a doll and they say, show me where it hurts. Now that the map's on the wall, show me where it hurts. Ooh, it hurt me here. How bad does it hurt? Ooh, it's really, really bad. And what hurts? 50% of the time when the paperwork prints from the system, it's missing the delivery instructions. Great, thank you. Let's write that down. Now, I don't want to fix what the executive said. I want to fix the 50% of the time because that's going to cause all the other problems down the way. So I'm going to the believable class of employees and saying, show me where it hurts, tell me how badly it hurts, and then let's figure out how to resolve that problem. because that problem is likely the root cause. See, in America, I don't know if it's like this in Australia, but here in America, we play a game of whack-a-mole as managers. We see a problem and we try to solve it. Go to Japan. They do not do that. They say, wait a second, here's a problem. Let's break this down. Let's peel this onion, get every layer out, find out what the little tiny kernel is, solve that problem so that the problem never happens again. So we need to do the same thing when it comes to discovery around building software or process. Stand up against a wall, put a map up on the wall, ask people where it hurts. How do you resolve this problem? Then focus our attention there. Because if the employees are working every day, imagine that you and I meet and I walk in and I'm limping and I'm like, oh boy, I'm really in a lot of pain. Do you have any Tylenol? And you say, what's wrong? And I say, oh, I've all this glass and rocks in my shoe. It just really, really hurts. You would say, well, why don't you take your shoe off and take the rocks out? But in business, we just give people Tylenol. It's like, no, let's shake out all the rocks in your shoe so you can run versus just walk. So that's what we have to do. Our discovery has to take into account, not just what the client says they want, but what the client actually needs. And the difference between those two can sometimes be very, very far apart because the believables in the organization likely don't have the voice of the executive. All the executive has heard is the believables voice filtered through managers that are screaming, we need more resources, we need more resources. And they're assuming it's a resource problem when all it might be is just a setting in the back of the software. We've got to make that connection between the two. And that's really how we work differently.
Yeah, look, and you know, I get a lot of I have a lot of conversations at the moment with major SaaS partners where they're saying that, you know, this whole immediacy game that we're all in, you know, it's media cycles, it's, you know, we're addicted to, you know, immediacy on our mobile phones, etc. That companies, and, you know, obviously in the US, you know, the election's coming up. It's like we've
I hadn't noticed.
yeah, we've all and so's the world.
Yeah.
We've sort of frozen a little on actually taking the really big hits, you know, like it's like that addiction to the immediate win is taken over actually getting to that core problem. Because I completely agree. It's like my physio. We always laugh. I walk in with my assumptions and I say, look, I think it's this, this, and this, and it's where it hurts is not where it starts, right? It's the same with my golf
Yeah.
swing. I walk in and say, I think I need to do this. And my golf, he's like, no, you actually need to fix this. And we all do it, and it happens in business. So I'll get back to the question, which is, how are you finding the desire to actually make those big changes versus, you know, these immediate fix, which we're addicted to?
Yeah, it's tough because, you know, the problem is I've literally done workshops with companies where we have looked at the process at the end and realized that one of the channels that we go down is we lose money every time.
Yeah.
And I say to them, and they're like, but so I'm like, why don't we just stop doing this? Because this is where yeah, but we need that revenue to hit our goal. I'm like, yeah, but all of the losses for the company are in that channel, but we need the revenue because that's our goal. My bonus is tied to that. So we have to keep doing it. And I'm going, that's ridiculous. So I think we have to change this idea of goals and we have to move it more towards aim and start to think of it as an aim instead of a goal. Because if I have an aim, you're talking about your golf swing. If you show up and let's say you really want to up your game and you get a new coach and you go out there and he looks at your swing and says, I got to start you all over again. You're like, okay, cool. You know, you're going to get worse. Correct. First. Yes. To get better. So we have to teach that to people. And sometimes, honestly, I have to get the immediacy where I have to find low-hanging fruit to fix so that people have the capacity to spend some time and energy and money on the other side to really do that. But this immediacy problem is not just a problem in business. It's in everything. I don't know what the top 10 movies are in Australia, but if you look in the United States, every one of them is a sequel or a remake. Yes. There's no new ideas out there. Yes. There's no new music. I mean, Taylor Swift's Eras Tour is her just doing old music. Eminem's new album, his co-star is Slim Shady, the old Eminem. Yes. Like nobody's coming up with new ideas. Unfortunately, we're just trying to use pastiche blending and take our existing idea and modify it slightly. And that's a problem because it means that our ideology is so baked that we're unwilling to disassemble our ideology, take in new ideas, reformulate that, and take a new approach. So this is why I tell companies all the time anymore, I don't like the idea of a goal. Let's have an aim to improve this organization. That might mean temporarily things have to get a little bit worse. It might mean we have to take our eye off of hitting the goal and instead focus on the longer shot at the aim. I would much rather aim for Mars and miss and hit the moon. And that's still success. I think so many times we get so stuck in these goals of like, we have to hit this at all costs. Great example of this, and not to go on too much of a tangent, but after World War II, the Japanese were producing 4 cars per employee in the automotive industry. The Americans were producing 10. And then the Japanese took on continuous improvement. And 20 years later, the Americans were still producing 10, and the Japanese were producing 60 per employee.
Yes.
From 4 to 60 with the same number of people. And the Americans are still doing 10 and 10. That's because there was a goal, right? And the Americans are like, we have to do 10, we have to do 10, we have to do 10. The Japanese were like, let's just do more every day than we did yesterday. Every day they got better and better and better and better and better. Their aim was lifted. They're not even done at 60. Who knows what they do today? It's probably 120. But that's what we have to do. We have to change that perspective, and we have to focus a little bit more and understand that there's a combination of both long and short-term things.
Yes.
And sometimes we have to do the short term to make time so that we can do the long term.
The clients that you work with, what's the mix of public versus private?
All private.
Yeah. And that's, I think, the biggest difference, right? I think if you're listening around, like I know some of the big ticket items or the big deals in enterprise, they look fantastic. And I've only got to pick up a $500,000 or $1 million deal, and that makes everything so much easier. But the problem with that is that a lot of these public companies, and, I worked for one of the biggest in the world, Coca-Cola, for 18 years. It was all based on quarterly announcements to the shareholders. So all the executives were incentivized. Yes, they were intelligent people. They did think long-term, right? But often they got rewarded on a short-term basis. So I think if you've got to make a choice to really make a process change, I think the private companies are the ones that are more willing to do that than the public ones on a general thing. And, that's...
Now,
go for it.
Yeah, let me say to that point. I mean, we do with some publicly traded companies. The history of process triage, one of our tools, is it was created by a publicly traded company that accredited 9 digits in bottom line savings to this tool in its creation. The difference is with us is that usually when it's a private company, we're doing the work. When it's a publicly traded company, they're calling me and saying, I want to license your methodology. And they're paying me a fee for me to train somebody or multiple people. I have one right now, government agency here in the US that's actually asked us to possibly train 10 people. I have another publicly traded company. Can you come in and train 7? We'll pay you a license fee for your IP, but you don't get our data. You don't see what we're doing with this. There's a little bit of a different perspective there. And maybe they're using that as due diligence for companies they're acquiring. Maybe they're using it in a multitude of different ways. I just don't get that visibility because I'm not the one in the seat.
Yeah.
I'm not the one walking and doing the work.
And we'll have in the show notes, I know you've written 4 books. You're coming up with the 5th. So you've got lots and lots of methodologies and IPs there. But I know that we spoke about the M4. So just give us a quick snapshot of what M4 means and how it relates to our SaaS partners.
I think if you go back and look through my books, I think this is the one thing that I'm really a big believer of. And I mentioned ideology earlier. I am excited to deconstruct my ideology every day and try to reformulate it. So it's cool to me when I read back to the 4 books that I've written, I can see a thread that has become M4, but some of the stuff that I even wrote in methods years ago, I'm like, I have such a better method than that right now. This is a cool part about the type of work that I do. So M4 is map, measure, manage, and motivate. Get everybody out in the organization. To me, nobody goes on a road trip with an Excel spreadsheet to navigate their way. Nobody takes a PowerPoint deck to navigate a road trip. You need a map. And a map is a visual representation of what is happening. Human beings are predisposed to maps. Maps, actually, some of the earliest cave paintings now look like they predate complex human language. Meaning we were using maps to navigate this world and understand where water is and where predators were and patterns of the moon and where we can go hunt and do all these. We were doing that long before you and I had podcasts, right? Before we even had sentences. I mean, we were grunting our way through the world and we were using maps. So mapping is really important. You've got to have something you can put up against a wall and that people can get shoulder friction and bump into each other and feel like they're in each other's space and touch and move things around. Once we do that, then I want to start measuring.
Actually, sorry, Derrick, just before you go into that one, I just want to ask you about, you made a really good point around the fact that mapping is more difficult when it's remote. Like at the moment, you have a solution that's, in person. Have you changed your view? Have you come up with a solution that is remote at the moment around that mapping exercise?
I've got 24 feet of whiteboard on it this morning. So we're finding ways to do this. But I will tell you, there is an element that is lost. And the element that is lost is this. There is, no matter which way you slice it, we are animals.
Yes.
Evolution, we have evolved into who we are today in a very specific way. Simon Sinek recently said on his podcast, 93% of emotional human connection is smell-based.
Yeah.
Think about that. 93% is pheromones. We're not talking about body odor. We're talking about pheromones. We can pick up fear. We can sense things from other people. We spent hundreds of thousands of years building things together, shoulder with our shoulders bumping into this face-to-face thing. That's a negotiating position. Think about 1,000 years ago, how many face-to-face interactions you had. Not many.
No.
Your interactions were shoulder to shoulder, hunting. Think of all your earliest human memories. Think about cooking with your grandmother, fishing with your grandfather, woodworking with your dad. Those aren't face-to-face interactions. They're bumping into each other shoulder to shoulder. So it's hard to do that virtually.
Yes.
Really hard. Can we walk away with it? Yes. We will get a work product that's about 10% of what it will be if we can get people in a room together. Because when they're in the room together and you show your pain, and I realize that I'm the one that caused that, and I look over and I see from the side and you're a little, like I can watch the emotion on your face. I go, oh man, yeah, like I did that to you. I don't get that on Zoom.
Yes.
I don't get the body language. I don't get the pheromones. I don't get all of those things that happen. So yes, you can do some things virtually, but boy, I feel like as a society, we maybe the reason we have so much anxiety and all these kind of things is because we're not getting a good read on people. 94% of human communication is not with words. It's intonation, it's body language, it's stance, it's position, it's looking in your eye versus your mouth. All these things that you and I can't do right now.
Yes.
So yes, there is a virtual element that can be done, but man, I feel terrible doing it, because it does make it harder. And listen, it just depends upon what our intention is. If my intention is really to big empathy with a team and to workshop with a team, I got to have them in person. If my intent really is just to map out some sort of flow, yeah, okay, we can do it virtually. But that's a big piece, right? We forget that we are animals in the end. And there is something there that we don't yet understand. Our species hasn't yet fully been able to understand why in person is so different than virtual.
All right, great. So we got map, measure. Sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, measure. No, measure is really important, because to me, we're so used to talking about KPIs and goals and OKRs and all that kind of stuff. Measurement, to me, the biggest engagements that I've ever done, the most success I've ever had, is things like putting Fitbits on all the employees and watching how many steps they walk in a day, and then moving around things to find a way for them to walk more efficiently through the facility. We had a client just years ago, 49% reduction in the steps people walked every day, and the average person walked 6.5 miles a day.
Wow.
So 3.25 miles of paid walking a day per employee. Mapping out things like, how much time does it take to go through this process?
Yes.
How much time is there in between bubble to bubble? How much time does this series of bubbles take? What's the average time? What's the best time we've ever done? Could we cut that down by 10% or 5%? So to me, measurement is different. I'm measuring distance. I'm measuring friction. I'm measuring time. I'm measuring frustration and pain. I'm not measuring an outcome or an output. I'm measuring the throughput. You know, for 50 years, the method of management in the whole world, Western management, was the XY axis called a process control chart. Every single human being that worked in any business from 1920 till about 1980 knew how to use a process control chart, and they had dozens of them sitting on their desk. I go talk to CEO groups and I say, how many of you know what a process control chart is? 98% of them have never even heard of it. And I'm going, wait a second, before computers, this is how everything was managed.
Yes.
And you don't even know how to use the basic 101 first thing you're taught in management school? Yikes. What insights are you lacking? Because you don't know how to create an XY axis with time at the bottom and what you're tracking on the side and measure that out and look and go, oh, there's an anomaly. Why did that happen? I need to investigate this. Oh, Tuesdays are better than Thursdays. That's 3 weeks in a row. Wonder why? Oh, we buy lunch for employees on Tuesday. Wait, do we get an 8% increase in productivity when we buy lunch for employees? Maybe we should start buying lunch for employees more often. Like, we don't have the insights, because data to us is a static thing that we look at.
Yes.
And we make decisions on. But the reality is data is worthless. What you need is to understand why that data is there, how that data got there.
Brilliant.
That's what we do. Measure.
Measure. Correct. And then we've got manage.
Manage is simple. Easiest thing you will ever do is manage people.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Now, well, how do I say that? Because the first rule of Japanese management, and we are firm believers of this, human beings cannot make mistakes. If a mistake has occurred, it is always the result of a system or process has been implemented incorrectly. Yeah. So I never blame people for problems. I always say if they screwed up, it had to be because my system is inferior. Yeah. I mean, if my system was better, they couldn't have screwed up. Yeah. So if they have the mindset that they can't make a mistake, then all of a sudden they're more willing to show me what's happening. Or if they do screw something up, they know they're not going to get blamed. They run into my office. They're like, ha, look what I just messed up. And I'm like, wow, thanks, congratulations. Now I can fix that for the next time. So that's what the manage piece is. The other piece of that is this. If I engage the frontline believables in my organization and I give them a voice and a platform and an ability to talk about their problems that makes it up to the executive level, and the executive level then fixes those problems, guess who won't fight those changes? Those people, because it's their idea. Yes. When it's my idea and I send out the memo, oh, everybody's going to change this, they all go, you idiot, you don't know what's, when it's their idea and I empower that idea and roll it out, then they hold each other accountable to making sure that idea gets put into place. So management's simple. It's all about not blaming people, always blaming the process, improving the process every single day so that people can't make mistakes. And then finally giving people a voice. You know, the Japanese, a lot of people don't know this, but the Japanese contracts, whenever they went and grew that fast, you had it in your employment contract that said, if you come up with an idea that eliminates your job, the company will continue to pay you until such a time the company can find another role for you. So they incentivized people to find ways to make the work so simple and easy that they didn't have to do it and they could automate it. Like we don't approach, in the US, we think, oh, we automate stuff so that we can get rid of people. No, empower people at the front line to figure out how to automate things and then just keep paying them and then find another place for them. So management's simple.
Yeah. And the last one?
The last one, this is really about mobilizing people inside a system like this where employees don't believe they can make mistakes. If they make a mistake, everybody celebrates it. And it's, you know, on a Japanese manufacturing line, they have these things called udon cords. You can pull the cord, it shuts the whole factory down. And all management is required to come to you as an employee and hear out what you saw, why you think the plant should be shut down. But here's the thing that we skip. The first step of that is that all managers have to line up and personally thank that person for shutting the plant down. It takes about 15 minutes. Thank you so much for shutting our plant down today, before they've even heard why you shut the plant down. And then they hear your problem. Why do you, well, you know, we saw this little thing here and I think it's out of place and we need to fix this. To mobilize people by empowering them and saying, you can't make a mistake. We're always going to blame the system. We're always going to work to improve the system. I'm going to empower you to come up with ways to help me improve the system. And I'll be your go fetch boy to go get you what you need so that we can improve the system every day. All of a sudden, people are mobilized like crazy. They're walking around talking about somebody needs to analyze why this keeps happening. Can we design a better solution for this? And I'm talking about, you know, high school dropout forklift drivers that are walking around asking questions about why doesn't somebody analyze how we come up with a better solution here? We get them thinking. See, here in the West, we usually hire people from the neck down. We call them the hands, right? I'm going to have an all hands meeting, which means I, the almighty head, I'm going to dictate to you lowly hands what you should do. No, they're going to bring their heads to work anyways. Let's just engage them in that and mobilize them and say, look, go out into the business and find things that are wrong and share them with us. Share them with your colleagues. Vote on that. Let's understand what are the top 3 problems and let's just start hammering on those things. And if you do those 4 things together, what you're going to find is a business that's incredibly easy to run. You're going to have lots of automation. You're going to have tons of cash to spend on Salesforce and NetSuite and anything that you need to do to automate it. And you're going to have an environment that people only go to work for 3 reasons: fear or finance, or because they want to. Maybe we should just focus on getting them to want to.
Yeah, no,
I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy.
No, it's brilliant. And look, I think just reminder 570 Derrick Mains, and you know, Derrick, you can type in, you know, Derrick Mains, Amazon, you'll get his bio, you'll get all the books are all there. Amazon make it very easy for you to learn more. But I think ultimately the reason I brought Derrick on is face these challenges every day, right? You go into a business, you face these every day, and you've got 2 choices. One is that you can recruit your own team to handle those challenges and broaden, you know, just from a tech stack into full consulting and process improvement. Or the second is you get someone like Derrick in the process fixer to help. And you can see how passionate and knowledgeable he is. It's a great option to bring a specialist in. And, we sort of talked about physios, et cetera, at the start, but, you don't go to your local physician and, they're performing specific surgery for you. And I think it's the exact same thing here. And I think the Japanese and the learnings, and I know in your podcast, you've got one about Deming,
Yeah.
and I
It's
think
my favorite.
yeah. So go and check that out. But, I think the question you've got to ask yourself is, that these problems exist, and that you're going to be blamed for a failed system implementation when it's not. It's a bit like the system versus the people. You're blamed for the reason that the system didn't work, but it's actually because we never did this piece in the first instance, right? And we didn't get it right. And most of us are dealing with, small to medium enterprises, and you're dealing with owners, right? So it's hitting their back pocket. And pick the right ones. They've got the patience to do it. What we're going to do now, Derrick, is we're just going to pause for a moment, thank our sponsors, then we're going to come back into the rapid fire. Running a tech consulting business can feel like a solo journey, but what if you didn't have to navigate it alone? Introducing the Tech Collective, your go-to resource for tackling those burning questions and unlocking your potential. Join a dynamic collective of experienced tech consultants ready to share insights, strategies, and support to help you today. Grappling with sales, clients, team challenges, our Tech Collective has your back. Join us today at paulhigginsmentoring.com/TC. There's a link in the show notes. There's a small application, and as a thank you for being a listener, enter the coupon code TC, capital TC25 at checkout. That's TC25 to get 25% off. Visit paulhigginsmentoring.com/TC today. So, Derrick, change your gears, rapid fire. So I'm going to ask you 4 questions, get 4 rapid responses. Are you ready?
I'm going to try. I'm going to try. You've seen already. This is tough for me. So let's see how we do.
All right. So the first one is, what are some of the daily habits you do to help scale the processfixer.com?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is whiteboarding and throwing away every single pen in your organization. Never, ever use a pen. It's the worst tool in the world. Pencil has an eraser on it. It gives me the ability to change my mind and to iterate. I don't allow pens around me. Don't bring them into a meeting with me. I will throw them in the garbage. Move to items that you can erase. It'll change the way you think.
Yeah. And just the only change, I don't know if you're watching this on YouTube, is that I've got a pen that I can erase
there you go.
On a piece of I forget what it's called now. And
Remarkable tablet? Yeah.
I'm extending it. No, the Rocket Book, the old Rocket Book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So tools like that.
Concept.
I mean, I think, you use pens to sign contracts. So I have one in my office.
Yes.
Right. And it is there to sign contracts. That's it. I don't use it for anything else. I have carpenter's pencils. You should see my whole floor is covered in wood shavings. It's like a barn in here because I am always sharpening pencils in the background because I have them all over the place. It just gives me a feeling of freedom of not having to get it right the first time.
Yeah, brilliant. Love it. Next is, where do you go to find out more about scaling your business?
Yeah, check out theprocessfixer.com. That is where we have a lot of great information. I've got a whole Substack community on there where I meet every week or every 2 weeks with people and talk about these kind of things. You can subscribe to that kind of stuff. But theprocessfixer.com or my LinkedIn is usually the best.
Great. And if I could grant you one wish for the Process Fixer, what would it be?
To me, it's not about money anymore. It is not about anything other than changing the Western management ideology. I think capitalism is the greatest system ever. But Slavoj Zizek, one of the great philosophers of our time, says we all can imagine how the end of the world happens in the next 10 years, but try to imagine the end of capitalism. You can't do it. And if you can't think beyond the current system that we have, we can't improve it. To me, it is about having a voice globally to change Western management ideology and say there's actually a better way. And with so much automation coming in, we need it, because the reason we work a 40-hour work week is because Ford discovered that we produce the same amount in 40 hours than in 48 hours. That's the only reason. Yeah. He had a process control chart that showed him it was the same. And he was like, I'm going to save some money. Maybe the future's 24 hours. Maybe it's 12 hours.
Yes.
Maybe it's something different,
Yes.
but we still need the profits. We still need the money. So
Yes.
let's focus on the optimization. I did it at a company I was COO of. I told employees on our manufacturing floor that here's the goal for the week. Once you hit the goal, you go home and get paid for the full week.
Yes.
Well, they usually worked about 30 hours and they always got paid for the full week. They produced high quality, high value work in the quantity that I needed, and I rewarded them with their time back. We got to start thinking about it like that.
Yeah, totally. And the last one is, what do you know now that you wish you had have known earlier around the whole process methodology?
I think everything takes way more time than you expect. I think that's the hardest thing for me still to this day. No matter what we do, we discover a problem and it's so simple to fix. But yet still the bureaucracy, the change management, the project management, I had something today. I'm like, can we fix this? And they're like, we can get it in the November 5th sprint. I'm like, how do we get things done more quickly? That's patience is a virtue. And it's one that I lack.
Yeah.
So I wish I was more patient.
Brilliant. Well, you've been listening to Derrick Baines. Like I said, we're going to have a lot of links in the show notes so you can follow him on LinkedIn, get his books, and he's also got a fantastic podcast we'll put the links to as well. But thanks for coming on and sort of opening our eyes to, how in the Western way that we do things isn't always right. You've shown us a lot of examples from the Japanese and how they've got it right. And like I said, for you, you got a choice. You can either, continue to try to do it yourself, but if you want to bring in an expert or get Derrick's methodology and get your team accredited on that, it's certainly a way to improve it. But you can't avoid the fact that the system's not going to be standalone, right? You just can't put Salesforce, NetSuite, you name it, in and think that humans are going to behave exactly how the system wants it. It doesn't work that way. All right, brilliant. Thanks for coming on today, Derrick.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
Great interview with Derrick. And as he says himself, he loves talking. He's really passionate about this, as you can hear. He's got his 4 books. He's got his podcast. There's so much information you can gain from Eric outside of what he articulated today. Reach out to him on LinkedIn. The link is there so that you heard him on the show. Also, I'm sure some of your peers could benefit from this, so please share it with them. And don't forget to watch Derrick and I on the Paul Higgins Mentoring channel on YouTube. And I'll see you next time on the Paul Higgins Show. Time for action. Let me know what you implemented from the show. I promise to respond. Plus, get the Tech Consultants Roadmap at paulhigginsmentoring.com/roadmap.